Okay.
And so, too, women to whom non-Jews said, give us one of you, and we shall defile her. Otherwise, we shall defile all of you. Let all of them be defiled, but let them not hand over to them one Israelite soul. If one sowed truma, if in error, he must plow it over, but if willfully, he must let it grow. If it reached a third of its growth, whether in error or willfully, he must let it grow. In the case of flax, if willfully, he must plow it over. It is liable to lechet, shecha, and peah, and poor Israelites and poor priests may gather it, and the poor Israelites must sell theirs to the priests at the price of truma, and the money is theirs. Tarfon says only poor priests should gather, for they may forget and put it in their mouths. Rabbi Akiva said to him, if so, let only the ritually clean gather.
Okay, and we said that Rabbi Akiva wasn't saying that to halacha. He was saying that he was just criticizing Rabbi Tarfon, saying that your opinion is inconsistent.
Right.
Okay. Mishna Gimel, v'chayeves b'masrafs of a master ani. So we're talking about the situation where truma was planted, and now it grows a nice big field, and people and now you harvest it. Now it is still truma because it's always been truma. It never lost its shame of truma. But not it's also not only do you have to give we just saw in the previous Mishnah that you have to give the matanas laniyim. Okay, but also masras and maser sheni have to be taken off it. V'aniya Yisrael v'aniya kohanim notlim, and they can give maser ani to if it's a 30 or a 60, or then you give the maser ani, and you can give it to a Yisrael or to a kohen ani. And once again, the Yisraelim can sell it to Kohanim at Truma prices. And the money becomes chulin, and there's no issues. Okay. Hachovet meshubach. Now, hachovet. So when you have these the things that grew from Truma, so what you should do in order to thresh them to separate the wheat from the chaff, it's good not to rather than using an animal to do it by hand with sticks, so that you shouldn't need to muzzle up the animal, because the animal is not going to be allowed to eat the truma. Okay. So that's better. The hadash, but if somebody doesn't want to spend the physical effort or hiring workers to take sticks to beat it, and they want to use animal labor, what's he going to do? Because we have a negative mitzvah that you're not allowed to muzzle an ox on the threshing floor, but the ox is not going to be allowed to eat it. So what must he do? Vadash ketzad yaseh tole kafifos betzavre behema. So he must hang a feed bag around the animal's throat. Okay, around the animal's neck. And v'nosein lesochan me also hamin. So if it's wheat, then he should put chulin wheat into the animal's bag. Nimta lo zomeh mesabehema. Therefore, he's not being over on muzzling the animal, because it can eat whenever it wants to. V'lo ma'achiles truma, and he's also not feeding it the truma. Okay, so that's a practical solution to I don't know how common the problem was that somebody accidentally planted a field full of truma. Okay. Gidule truma. So now the Mishnah tells us that as we've just been learning up until now, that if truma was planted and it grew, then whatever comes out of it is truma, and it'll be asur for non-kohanim to eat. Okay. Because why is this? Because it's a gezerah because of truma tamea that's in the if the kohen has got truma tamea in his hands, and he says, I don't want to throw this out, let me just plant it.
But now we just understand what this is. The product of truma is truma, but the product of the product is chulin. So the product,
right? But the product of the product. If he then took the growth that came from this and sowed it again, that actually comes out as chulin. I mean, why? Because it's not you're already on a gezerah on the first one. The first one is a gezerah because we don't want kohanim. Let's say a kohen has got some wheat truma and it became tameh. It says, instead of burning it, let me just plant it, and it'll go out, and it'll um, and it'll degenerate, and it's zaro kale, and it'll grow up, and it'll be nice, a nice new crop. So I can't eat it, but let me plant it. And I said, well, actually, we're going to make sure that if you do that, then the whole crop is going to come up being truma, which even the Kohen doesn't really want, because chulin is worth more than truma.
Right.
And now he's got to worry about all of the matanas laniyim and warning people, and it's just a bit of a headache. But there was no reason to make a gezerah, to make a second gezerah. Gidulhem dinam kachulim. Aval tevel. Now, what about tevel? That's untitled produce that got planted. Or maaser rishon. Usviche shvius. Usviche shvius means things that sprouted during Shemitah, which we have a gezerah against. Trumas chutz laaretz, and truma from chutz laaretz, a meduma, and a mixture of chulin and truma. But bikurim, which is supposed to go to the mikdash, gidule and chulin. Then even the first round of gidulin is chulin. We don't make any gezerahs on it that keep its original status. So it only seems to be truma that if it's planted, then the first generation that grows from it is still considered truma. Okay, and the reason is given in the Rishalmi tevel, because the majority of it is chulin, and it's only a small portion that's going to be taken out that was supposed to be taken out for trumas and mashos. And similarly, maaser rishon and meduma, right, also have a majority portion that's actually ultimately going to be heter. Okay, sviche shvius. Because it's not common to find sviche shvius, so therefore, because it only happens during the Shemitah year, so there's no need to make any gezerahs on that. And trumas chutz laaretz is also not that common, and also bikurim, because they only happen, they only apply to the shiva samenim. So it's like things that are not common. So all of this, by the way, is only applicable when we're talking about davar shezaro kale, something where the seed degenerates in the ground, as opposed to onions and garlic that actually stay in the ground. Okay. In those cases, even the gidule are asur, because it's still the same plant. If you have truma onions and they got planted, and they sprouted, and they got planted again, and they sprouted, the whole thing stays truma forever.
Right. Right. Okay.
So all of this that we're talking about, the second generation, is only talking about something where the seed degenerates. Okay. Gidule hekdesh maaser sheni chulin upodeosam bisman zar'am. If something grew from hekdesh or maaser sheni, then we say that whatever grows out of it is still chulin, but he must do a redemption on them bisman zar'am, at the time of their sowing. At least the redemption is done at the value that they were at when they were sown. So obviously the seed is worth a lot less than the grown plant. So if he realizes that, oh, I just planted a field of hekdesh, and now it's all growing, so he has to do a pidyon on it. How do you evaluate the value of it? It's the value of the seed, not the value of the crop.
Okay.
Okay. Mishna Hey. Mea ligna shel truma v'achas shel chulin. So ligna is like an aruga, is like a square. It's a field that was sown in little squares. Okay, and it's got 100.
I lost your voice. So I lost your voice. Oh, now I hear you. Okay.
Got me? Okay.
Wait, unless you're reading to yourself. Unless.
I see something about my internet connection being unstable. Oh well.
All right.
Okay. So we've got so let's say this field has been divided into a 10 by 10 matrix.
Okay.
And well, slightly more. Let's say it's a 10 by 11 matrix, or a 9 by 11. Wait, not 9 by 11. You don't want to do that. You want to say, okay, let's just say it's a 10 by 10 and another square. Okay, and he's sown there are 100 of there are 100 squares of truma that were planted and 1 square of chulin. Okay.
Okay.
This is it's a hypothetical case over here. We don't. We're working with the principle over here, because and we don't know which one is the chulin. Okay. Kulan mutarin bedavar shizaro kale. Then all of them, because we're talking about a gezerah derabanan. If it's a davar shizaro kale, as we said, the seed disintegrates. So we can say that that all of the chitin that grow is considered chulin, and we don't have any. It's kind of like we saw in the previous Mishna, meduma. Meduma is also 100 truma against 1 chulin, is also called meduma, even though it's a tiny minority of chulin. But that one little square of chulin acts as a heter for the whole field, because in any case we were talking about a gezerah. And the Chachamim were making gedulei on these gedulim, because and to this extent that even 1 square of chulin is matir the whole lot. Aval b'davar she'ein zarok haleh, however, with things that do not disintegrate in the ground, like onions, afilu meya shel chulin v'achas shel truma, even if you've got 100 squares of chulin and 1 of truma, v'ein yadua, and we don't know which one is the truma, kulan asurin, the whole lot is asur, because mechuber lekarka is not batel even in 101. When we said that truma has a sheer bittel of 100 against 1, that's only with harvested things. But if it's still in the ground, the bittel doesn't work at all. So even if it's 100 chulin against 1 truma, the whole thing has to be treated as truma, because it's davish, because it's not it's onions, and there's some vadai truma in there.
Okay.
So the big chiddush there is that that one is that the bittel, the sheer bittel for truma, only occurs when it's been separated from the ground. But when it's still in the ground, that's there's no bittel. Okay. Vav Daled.
If one stole truma but did not eat it, he pays double the value of truma. If he ate it, he pays twice its value plus a fifth. The value plus a fifth from chulin and the value of truma. If one stole truma of hektish and ate it, he pays 2/5 and its value, since twofold payment does not apply to hektish. One may not pay from lechet, shecha, peah, or hefka, nor from Maisa Rishon, from which its truma has been taken, or from Maisa Sheni or hektish, which has been redeemed. For one holy thing cannot redeem another. So says Reb Meir, but the Chachamim permit with these. Okay. Reb Eliezer says one may pay with one kind for another, provided he pays from the superior for the inferior. But Rabbi Akiva says one may pay only with the same kind. Therefore, if he ate cucumbers of the 6th year, he must wait for the cucumbers of the 8th year and pay with them. From the same source that Reb Eliezer derives his lenient ruling, Reb Akiva derives his stringent ruling, as it is written, and he shall give the holy thing to the priest, anything that may become holy. So Reb Eliezer says, when Reb Akiva says, and he may give from the holy thing to the priest, the holy thing that he ate. And let me see. In the beginning, Reb Eliezer says, one may pay with one kind for another, provided he pays from the superior for the inferior. So he's paying more at this point.
Yes, as long as he's paying more, and he can give cucumbers for wheat if he wants, if the cucumbers are better.
But that's not considered any kind of ribbis, then, is it?
What's ribbis? No, there's no. Ribbis is when you're borrowing from another Jew. Here it's a case of truma, where you've taken truma out of the world. You've got to replace the truma. Giving back more is not that. It's not a loan. It's a restitution.
Okay, all right. If one eats
Shvius Vav Gimel.
I'm sorry, we finished that.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking that since the person was getting back more than what he was originally taken, that there would be considered a type of ribbis or something, but
no, because actually when he gives back, that's an interesting question. According to Rabbi Eliezer, then that he can Sorry, I'm just looking for my place there again. According to Rabbi Eliezer, can he, if he's paying back from a different min, how does he measure how much to give back? Is it according to value, according to weight, according to volume? Doesn't say. Doesn't say how he would measure it, if he has to give back according to the same volume, or if he has to give back according to.
Cucumbers are heavy, let's say. So if he's giving back beans, or something like that, then it's the weight's going to be different.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Bab Gimel.
Shavias. Onions on which rain has fallen and which have sprouted, if their leaves are black, they're forbidden. If they became green, they are permitted. Rav Chanina ben Antignia says if they can be pulled out by their leaves, they are forbidden. Like of these in the 8th year are permitted. I cross something out here. From when may one bar vegetables in the 8th year? Once the same kind is ripened and the early ripener has produced, the late ripener is permitted. Rebbe permitted to buy vegetables immediately after the end of the 7th year. One may not take out oil that must be burnt, and 7th year produce from Eretz Yisrael beyond Eretz Yisrael. Reb Shimon says, I heard expressly that one may take to Syria, but not from beyond Eretz Yisrael.
Halacha enokot Reb Shimon. Brachas Vav Hey.
If one recited the blessing over wine before the meal, he has exempted the wine drunk after the meal. If one recited a bracha over the paperet before the meal, he need not recite any other blessing over the paperet after the conclusion of the meal. If he recited the blessing over bread, he has exempted the paperet. Over paperet, he does not exempt the bread, and Beit Shammai says also not any cooked dish.
Just a second, Beit Shammai saying not any cooked dish, just like if he makes a bracha on the papiris before, it says it's considered a lesser bracha if it's not for something that's uncooked to something that is cooked. They're saying that you're not motzi, you're not yotze on the cooked food. You have to make a separate bracha for that. But that's Beit Shammai only. Okay, just wanted to understand that. Go ahead.
Where am I? Okay. If they were sitting upright to eat, each one blesses for himself. If they recline, one blesses for all. If wine is brought to them during the meal, each one blesses for himself. After the meal, one may bless for all, and he also recites the blessing over the incense, even though the incense is served after the meal. They served him with the savory to begin with, and bread with it. He recites the appropriate blessing over the savory and exempts the bread. Since the bread is now secondary, this is the rule. Whenever there is a staple food accompanied by a subsidiary item, he recites the blessing over the staple and exempts the subsidiary.
That's a great one. It's there's an occasion where bread actually becomes the tafel.
Right.
Okay.
Zion. If a pot was placed on a threshold in such a way that if raised it would extend over the outer handbreadth of the lintel, and there is tumah below, inside, or above the pot, the tumah penetrates upward and downward. If the pot is one handbreadth above the ground and there is tumah below it or inside the house, the area below the pot and the inside of the house become tameh, but whatever is inside or above the pot remains tahor. If the tumah is inside or above the pot, everything becomes tameh. If the pot was placed on the threshold so that it was raised, it would not touch an outer tefek of the lintel, or it is touching the side of the lintel, then there is tumah underneath the pot. Only what is below the pot becomes tameh.
This comes up to one of the famous chumras of Beis Hillel and the Kula of Beis Shammai.
Right.
Go on.
If the roof of a house is split and tumah is in the outer part, utensils that are in the inner part remain tahor. If the tumor is in the inner part, Beis Shammai says the split must be 4 tefachim wide, and the outer part is to remain tahor. Whereas Beis Hillel says it remains tahor even if the split is very small.
Sorry, this is not right. This isn't yet the Chumrah of Beis Hillel. We'll get to that very soon.
Yossi says in the name of Beis Hillel, a handbreadth. If a portion of split and tumor is in one side, utensils on the other side remain tahor. If a person places his foot on a reed on top of the split, or it combines, or he or it combines the tumor. If a person places a reed on the ground, he does not cause tumor to spread unless it is a handbreadth above the ground.
Right. So we're saying that the bridge, the gap between them has to be a tefach wide in order for that split. When you say the achsadra sunistika, it's got to be the split has got to be a tefach in order to separate the tumor from the two sides. And then he puts his foot over the two to make a bridge between the two sides, so that makes the two sides join for the tumor. Okay. Zikin.
Hey, we must wash the hands.
Wait, hold on. We are in Avodah Zarah, Aleph, no?
Oh, I'm right. I put it at the back because I wasn't sure how everything do that. Okay. Preceding the festivals, literally the calamities of idolaters, for 3 days it is forbidden to transact business, take and give with them, to lend them articles or to borrow articles from them, to lend them money or to borrow money from them, to repay a debt to them or accept payment from them. Rabbi Yehuda says we may accept repayment from them, since this causes him distress. They said to him, even though it causes him distress, he rejoices afterwards.
So repaying a loan hurts when he's repaying it, but the next day he feels relieved because he no longer has a loan over his head. So all these things of not doing trade with the goyim around the time of their festivals is so that they shouldn't feel happy and give thanks to their God.
Right. Rabbi Yismael says it is forbidden for 3 days preceding them and for 3 days following them, but the Chachamim say before the festivals is forbidden, after is permitted. These are the idolater festivals: Kalinda and Saturnina and Cratius, and the coronation day of emperors, and the birthday, and the anniversary of his death. And these are the words of Medmeah. The Chachamim say any death for which there is a burning, there is idolatry, but for which there is no burning, there is no idolatry. However, on the day of shaving of his beard or lock of hair, or the day that he returned from the sea, or the day that he was released from prison, or when an idolater makes a banquet for his son, the prohibitions apply only on that day and with regard to the man alone.
Right. So there's some things that are generic for all goyim on the day of their festivals, but when somebody has a personal simcha like his son's wedding or something like that, then you only shouldn't do business with that particular goy on that particular day. Okay, which makes sense. All right, and Chagiga.
We must wash the hands for unsanctified food, for Maisa, for Truma, and for Truma, but for Kodesh we must immerse the hands. Regarding the water of cleansing, if one's hands become entangled.
Hold on a second. I think we may have
skipped that one. I think we did.
We're in the base Vav, right? Yeah, you did. You're doing hay there. Yeah.
If one immerse himself for unsanctified food and only intended to cleanse himself for unsanctified food, he's prohibited from eating Maisa. If he immersed himself for Maisa and only intended to cleanse himself for Maisa, he is prohibited from eating Truma. If he immersed himself for Truma and only intended to cleanse himself for Truma, he is prohibited from eating Kodesh. If he immersed himself for Kodesh and only intended to cleanse himself for Kodesh, he is prohibited from touching water of cleansing. If he immersed himself for a more stringent matter, he is permitted to occupy himself with a less stringent matter. If he immersed himself without any intention, it is deemed as if he had not immersed himself at all.
I think that one over there, we still say that this tevila is good for achilas chulin, because at the very least, if somebody that's your lowest level, there's got to be something that he was toiling for. So therefore, the chulin doesn't need actually. Kathy makes the point here that the chulin doesn't need kavana in your tevila. So this is and why do you need to toivel to eat chulin if you've got somebody who's got a chumrah of eating chulin al taras hekdesh? But we make it on that one because that is just a chumrah that people would keep. Okay.
The garments of an Amaret have midrash contamination for Perushim. Garments of Perushim have midrash contamination for those who eat Truma. Garments of those who eat truma have midrash contamination for those who eat kodesh, and garments of those who eat kodesh have midrash contamination for those who handle purification water. Yosef ben Yotzet was the most devout of the Kohanim, yet his napkin was deemed to have midrash contamination for those who eat kodesh. Yochanan ben Gada used to eat according to the purity regulations of kodesh all his life, yet his napkin was deemed to have midrash contamination for those who handle purification water. The stringency of kodesh compared to truma is as follows. We may immerse vessels within other vessels for truma, but not for kodesh. The bottom, inside, and handle are considered separate vessels as regards truma, but not as regards kodesh.
Because we saw this in kalim, that kalim are that we've got the handle and the outside and the inside.
Right.
We've got all these things. But as far as kodesh is concerned, it's all one thing. If it becomes tama anywhere, the whole thing becomes tama. You don't have any separation.
Someone carrying a midrash may simultaneously carry truma, but not kodesh. The garments of those who eat truma have midrash contamination for those who eat kodesh. Unlike the rule of kodesh is the rule of truma. For in the case of immersing garments to be worn while handling kodesh, one must untie the knots, dry, immerse, and then retie them. But in the case of truma, one may tie and then immerse.
Yes, so truma, as we're saying, is much more makil than kodesh. Well, okay, so we almost finished this Masechta and the Seder. Sure, we just got what base? Got in 2 days' time. So on Sunday Erev Shavuos, we're going to make a siyum on the Seder Moed.
Oh wow! Okay,
that's cool.
Great. Okay, perfect timing.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Enjoy.
You too. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.